On Sunday, Detective William arrives at a crime scene and meets Detective David, who's just been transferred to the unit. The victim is a man who was shot to death. Neighbors report that he had been arguing with his wife for hours, so the police assume it's a crime of passion. On the way out, William mentions he's retiring soon and wonders why David pushed so hard to get assigned to this boring unit. David simply says he wants to do some good, but William reminds him that for the next week, he's still the one in charge. On Monday morning, David wakes up next to his wife Tracy, who gets annoyed when the phone rings early. He heads out to another crime scene, where he meets William again. When David questions if the victim is really dead, the cop who found the body gets angry, and William scolds David for being condescending. Inside they find cockroaches everywhere. The victim is dead at the table, face down in a plate of spaghetti, with his hands and feet tied. Underneath the table there's a bucket full of vomit. David keeps making sarcastic comments, so William sends him to question the neighbors. Later in the car, David reminds William that he already has a career in homicide and shouldn't be stuck doing grunt work. At the morgue, it takes 4 people to move the victim's massive body onto the table. The coroner explains the man ate until his insides ruptured. There are bruises on the back of his head, likely from a gun being pressed against him. William later briefs the captain, explaining that after forcing the victim to eat nonstop for 12 hours, the killer kicked him, causing internal bleeding that killed him. William points out that this isn't a simple murder, it's methodical with meaning behind it. He thinks it may be the start of a serial killer case. He asks to be reassigned, not wanting his last case before retirement to be something this dark. He also argues that it's too heavy for David. David gets offended, but the captain refuses to reassign William, though he does put David on another case. On Tuesday, another murder takes place. A defense attorney is found dead. Reporters swarm the scene as the district attorney tries to calm the press. At the crime scene, David finds a huge bloodstain spelling out the word, greed, and notices blood was used to draw glasses on a framed photo of a woman. Meanwhile, the captain gives William some evidence, pieces of plastic that were found in the obese victim's stomach. William revisits the crime scene and discovers strange holes in the floor behind the fridge. When he slides it back, he finds the word, gluttony written in grease on the wall, along with a note quoting Paradise Lost. It's clear now this is just the beginning. William theorizes that the killer is basing his crimes on the 7 deadly sins. The first victim was gluttony, the attorney was greed, and if he's right, there will be 1 murder a day until all 7 are complete. William, overwhelmed, tries to quit the case again, leaving the notes on David's desk. That night, William heads to the library, where he studies the Canterbury Tales, the Divine Comedy, and other classic works about sin. He photocopies pages and puts together a reading list for David. Meanwhile, David reviews the case files and evidence. On Wednesday, David complains that the reading list is too complicated, so an officer gets him the CliffsNotes versions. At the station, David learns he now has to share an office with William. When Tracy calls, she insists David hand the phone to William so she can invite him to dinner. That evening, William visits the couple's apartment. He chuckles when the entire place shakes from the train that passes right outside. After dinner, the detectives discuss the case. David believes the killer broke in on Friday and tortured the attorney all weekend. The man had been forced to cut off a pound of his own flesh with a knife and weigh it on a scale, just like in The Merchant of Venice. He bled to death from the wound, which was taken from his stomach. William wonders if the killer is trying to preach through these murders. David then shows him the altered photo of the woman with the glasses drawn on her. It's the attorney's wife who's already in protective custody. William realizes she must have missed something at the crime scene. The detectives visit her and show her the crime scene photos. She immediately points out that one of the paintings was hung upside down. Rushing back to the apartment, they take the painting down but at first find nothing. William brushes the wall behind it and uncovers fingerprints that spell out the words, "Help me." Lab tests reveal the prints don't belong to the victim, and they run them through the system. On Thursday they get a hit. The prints belong to a man named Victor who grew up Southern Baptist, has a long record and a history of mental illness. The police mobilize and raid his building. The place is filthy, with dozens of pine tree air fresheners hanging from the ceiling to mask a stench. In the bedroom they find what looks like a corpse in the bed. When they pull the sheets back they see a skeletal figure, Victor. The word sloth is written on the wall above him. Boxes of photos show his slow decay over the past year. Suddenly the corpse jolts awake. Victor is still alive, though barely. He's rushed to the hospital, where doctors explain he hasn't moved in a year. His muscles and spine are ruined, his tongue was cut out, his brain is mush, and he's on dozens of drugs. Interrogating him is impossible. Later that day, while the scene is still buzzing with cops, a reporter sneaks in and snaps a photo of William and David. Furious, David grabs the camera and smashes it, screaming at the guy to leave. That evening, Tracy calls William, saying she needs someone to talk to. She doesn't know anyone else in the city. The next morning, they meet at a diner. Tracy admits she hates living here but doesn't want to tell David, it would crush his career. She also reveals she's pregnant. William tells her that years ago he got a woman pregnant too, but she chose an abortion. Tracy explains she does want children, but not in a place like this city. William advises her not to tell David until she decides whether to keep the baby, and Tracy breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, William goes back to work. He and David review the case again. David dismisses the killer as a nutcase, but William insists the murders are carefully planned by someone highly methodical. He drags David back to the library to dig deeper into texts about the 7 deadly sins. At lunch, they stop at a pizza place where William quietly slips a man some cash for a risky favor. At first, he doesn't explain, but David pushes until William finally admits what he's done. The man who William had secretly paid earlier is revealed to be an FBI agent with access to the library system. He agrees to help by flagging anyone who checked out the kind of books on William's reading list. An hour later, a report comes back. Every single book was borrowed by someone under the name John Doe, obviously fake. The detectives head straight to the address tied to the card. When they knock on the door, the killer himself suddenly appears in the hallway. The moment he spots them, he opens fire. William and David dive for cover as bullets fly and John Doe bolts. David chases him down several floors, dodging shots and warning civilians to stay inside. At one point, a woman runs out of her apartment screaming, and David searches the place only to discover John has already escaped through a window. David looks outside just in time for John to fire at him again from an alley before slipping away. Furious, David climbs through the window and takes off across the rooftops. He sees John heading into an abandoned building and follows, smashing through a window to get inside. He notices a blood trail. John's been hit. The chase rages on until John escapes down a fire escape, causing a pile-up on the street as cars swerve and crash. David keeps after him, climbing down a trash pile to continue the pursuit. When he checks around a truck, John ambushes him from above, knocking him flat and grabbing his gun. John is about to shoot him in the head when William arrives, forcing John to flee again. David, still enraged, wants to go into John's apartment right away, but William reminds him they don't have a warrant. David pretends to calm down, then kicks the door in anyway. To cover themselves, they pay a neighbor to claim she called the cops because of suspicious activity. That gives them legal grounds to search. Inside, the place is a nightmare. Dangerous tools scattered in boxes. A neon cross glowing on the wall. Drawers full of medication stacked next to a Bible. Cabinets stuffed with grisly souvenirs from the murders. A photo of a woman in a fur coat. Dozens of notebooks filled with endless, obsessive ramblings. And in a hidden room, David discovers photographs of every single victim taken during their suffering, including pictures snapped by the reporter who had approached them earlier, meaning they'd already met John Doe without knowing it. Forensics finds a box of cash, a receipt, but not a single fingerprint anywhere. William pores over the journals but can't match any entries to the timeline of the murders. Then the phone rings. David answers. It's John Doe. He tells David he admires him but won't reveal more. It would ruin his surprise. The detectives realize the woman in the fur coat photo may be their next lead. On Saturday, they trace the receipt to a leather shop. The owner says John placed a custom order and shows them a photo of it, a grotesque strap-on codpiece with a blade attached. Just then, their pagers buzz. Police have found the woman from the photograph. The detectives rush to a club, where in the basement they find the woman dead on a bed. The word lust is carved into the door. On the floor, a man wrapped in a bedsheet is screaming in horror. At the station, David interrogates the club's owner but gets nothing useful. Meanwhile, William confronts the hysterical man with the photo of the codpiece. The man explains through sobs that John held a gun to his mouth and forced him to wear the device while assaulting the woman, killing her in the process. That night, shaken, David goes home and tells Tracy he loves her. William, back at his apartment, can't sleep. He smashes his metronome, then spends the night hurling a knife at his dartboard with flawless accuracy. On Sunday morning, 911 receives a call from John Doe himself. He calmly says he's killed again. Police soon discover another woman dead, this time with pride scrawled on the wall in her own blood. Her face had been cut open and bandaged, and a bottle of pills glued to one hand, a phone to the other. John had given her a choice: live disfigured or take the sedatives and end it. Her pride made her choose death. At the station, William tells David he's not retiring until this case is over. Suddenly, John Doe himself walks into the police station, drenched in blood, and demands to be arrested. David pulls his gun, officers swarm him, and John kneels, asking for a lawyer. When they try to take his fingerprints, they realize he has none. He's sliced the skin from his hands. The detectives are baffled. John wouldn't give up this easily. It must be part of his plan. Soon, his lawyer negotiates a deal. There are 2 more bodies hidden. John will lead William and David to them, but only if they go alone. If they refuse, he'll plead insanity and possibly walk free. If they accept, he'll confess fully in court. At first, the DA doesn't want to risk it, but lab results confirm the blood on John's clothes belongs to 2 new victims. They're forced to agree. The detectives are wired with microphones hidden under tape on their chests, and leave with John in the back of their car, a helicopter following overhead. Along the way, John refuses to talk about himself. He only insists his work is special and must be finished. William prods at his twisted logic, making John rant about sin and punishment. He insists all his victims were guilty, gluttonous, greedy, prideful, lustful, even if their sins seem small. He mocks David constantly, watching him simmer with anger. Eventually, John tells them to stop the car in the middle of a barren field beneath power lines. As they're walking, a delivery van appears. William rushes to stop it at gunpoint. A terrified driver gets out, swearing he was just hired to deliver a package for David. After checking him, William lets him go, but when he opens the box, his face turns to shock. Whatever's inside, it's horrifying. He radios his team, saying John now has the upper hand. Back with David, John begins taunting him directly. He reveals he learned everything about David's private life by paying off a cop. He says he visited Tracy, killed her, and put her head in the box, making his own sin envy. He tells David he must now complete the cycle and become wrath by killing him. William, realizing what's happened, desperately tries to calm David down. He won't reveal what's in the box, but his silence makes it obvious. John keeps talking, telling David that Tracy was pregnant. That's the breaking point. David snaps. He unloads his gun into John's head, then empties the rest of the clip into his body. That evening, David is taken away in shock, escorted by police for what he's done. William, weary and broken, finally turns in his badge and leaves the force. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of the exciting content coming your way. Every new video is made with you in mind, and I'd love to have you here for the journey. See you in the next one.